I am a qualified lawyer, but I am a career journalist. In journalism, as much as in law, one of the earliest things you learn is not to take anything on face value. Question everything. In fact, you're supposed to be skeptical, just short of being cynical. So if I had to maintain the fine balance between being skeptical and being cynical, I had to cultivate the desire to observe and absorb the positive, the progressive, resilient and disruptive worlds around us. I'm going to share with you some of my experiences as a career journalist, personal experiences over about 2 decades. One of my earliest meetings with Ratan Tata was just before the Nano was being launched. It was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting, but it lasted an hour and 45 minutes because he was so passionate about the subject. It was about 100 years that the car has been made the same way. Ratan Tata was convinced that there was a way of disrupting car manufacturing. He wanted the Nano project to be that disruptor. He wanted the Nano to break fresh ground in product engineering, in manufacturing, in materials, the kind of materials that were to be used, and above all, in assembling it. One of its favorite themes was to make the Nano in one central plant, the kits of the Nano to be made at one central plant, and then get it assembled across the country in small scale units. That was his way of offering jobs to hundreds and thousands of people around the country and around the world. Ratan Tata was convinced, but his team was not. His team had tasted success with the Indica about a decade ago, and they didn't think that this was a great idea. He pushed, and they pushed back, and finally he gave in. The Nano was launched like just another car, maybe a wiper less, but finally it was a spectacular failure. The question is, what if the team had listened to Ratan Tata? What if they had come up with an idea like the Tesla at that time? Or maybe a hybrid engine, or maybe something out of the blue? Not combating organizational resilience could be as fatal as that. Here was a case of great conviction but no courage. My next example is of loads of courage and conviction but no preparation. It was early 2012, and I made a trip all the way to Ethiopia to understand this man, Sai Ramakrishna Karuturi. He's a Bangalore-based firm who had taken 100,000 hectares of land on lease in Ethiopia for corporate farming. This land parcel is of the size of the National Capital Territory of Delhi. Karuturi Global Farm, actually 72 kilometers of a highway to South Sudan passes through that land parcel. This gentleman, who was making 40% net margins in selling cut roses to Europe, had bet his company on this project. He started clearing the land and then started farming. He sowed his first crop, maize, of about 10,000 hectares. A month before the harvest, the place got flooded. $15 million worth of money went down the drain. He went around asking the locals about the incidence of floods. They took him to various parts of the farm and showed him markings of water on trees, on boulders, on rocks. And they told him it happens every year. He said, I felt like a fool. The land parcel is sandwiched between two rivers, a perennial river called Barrow and a seasonal river called Alvaro. Next year, he built an 80-kilometer long dike, 15-meter wide and 15-meter tall dike around his farm. It didn't work. He's struggling, but he's holding on. Now let's see what happens when you do combat resilience effectively. If it hadn't been for Anand Mahindra's insistence in the mid-90s, the board of Mahindra & Mahindra was unlikely to clear his proposal to invest 600 crores into a project that would finally produce an indigenous car, a project that we all know as the Scorpio. The nervousness of the Mahindra & Mahindra board was obvious. The company was all of 2,500 crore at that point in time. Anand Mahindra was asking for 600 crore, which was equivalent to 4 times the company's net profit of that year. In effect, he was betting his shirt on this project. Years later, Anand Mahindra narrated to me what a board member told him. He said, Anand, you didn't know at that time, but your job was on the line. If the Scorpio hadn't succeeded, we might have come back to you and said, you need to find something else to do. Now you may ask, how can the scion of the founding family be thrown out of his company? Well, if you have stalwarts like ICICI Bank Chairman N. Vagul, Unilever Chairman Ashok Ganguly, HDFC Chairman Deepak Parekh on your board, I can assure you the board definitely had a plan B. The success of the Scorpio and other vehicles emboldened Anand Mahindra to begin M&M's journey into the unknown. The company today makes everything from scooters to two-wheelers to cars and tractors and trucks to, do you know, power boats and even planes. It is 40 times larger today than it was when the Scorpio was launched. Or let's take the example of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. His flaccid handshake is in stark contrast to the control freak that he is. This is Anand Mahindra's story that we did on the cover, which we called Surface to Air Company. Here's Bezos. He could surprise you with his unexpected bouts of hearty laughter. In fact, he guffaws, often as his own statements. But there's a lot more to Bezos, the most enigmatic character in corporate America. If investors goaded him to deliver profitable quarterlies, Bezos continues to reinvest the money in his business and book losses for 23 years, year after year, quarter after quarter. If the global trend is towards greater corporate transparency, Amazon prefers to disclose as little as possible. If Bezos hadn't resisted the investors, the analyst community, and the quarterly hawks, it is unlikely that Amazon would be what it is today. It is the world's best known e-tailer, but that is also the business in which Amazon makes almost no money. In fact, it loses money. Bezos makes up for it from the highly profitable Amazon Web Services business and from selling devices such as the e-reader Kindle. Sometimes it's a question of just timing and pushing back at the organization. Last year, I was working on this cover story on Infosys. Vishal Sikka had been there for about a year and a half. He was telling me passionately about the kind of company he was trying to create, a new age IT firm through automation, through artificial intelligence, with new philosophies such as zero distance, design thinking. The interesting thing is that this is the narrative which is not vastly different from what his predecessor Shibulal used to call Infosys 3.0. The mild-mannered Shibulal was done in by the resilient organization that Infosys is. It just refused to change. But the hard-charging Sikka would have none of it. He removed anything that came in the way of his plans. In fact, he brought in 23 people at senior level from outside to execute his plans. Investors love him. Infosys is today 50% more valuable than it was when Sikka joined. On a broader canvas, let's see how do companies deal with resilience in, let's say, the economy. Very large area. The answer lies in looking within. In 2013, we were relaunching Businessworld, and for the inaugural issue, I was meeting some of the bigger CEOs in the country, from Kumar Mangalam Birla to N. Chandrasekaran, Adi Godrej, Aditya Puri of HDFC, and Sajjan Jindal. It had been 5 debilitating years of slowdown. This was the cover we did. And I posed one common question to each one of them. How long before we are out of it? 9 out of 10 said, the worst is over. It can get only better than from here. It has been 4 long years since then. The country and the world is still in the grips of a slowdown. But each one of those CEOs had doubled their revenues in the 5 years that we were talking about. The one common thread was that neither of them waited for the slowdown to hit them. In fact, they took the bull by the horns. Adi Godrej used the negative working capital that he was producing to make acquisitions abroad. Sajjan Jindal of JSW Steel decided to expand his capacity. In fact, he doubled his capacity to avail of cheaper equipment, contractors, as well as labor. His philosophy was to invest in a down cycle and reap benefits in an up cycle. Aditya Puri of HDFC Bank, largely an urban bank, went into the uncharted territory of rural India, and Harsh Mariwala decided to enter absolutely underpenetrated sectors such as breakfast cereals and deodorants. So really, you don't need to know the distance to Mars if you know how to get there anyways. But here's an example where somebody not just knows the distance to Mars, but also knows how to get there. I was meeting Mukesh Ambani and his confidant Manoj Modi around the time that they had launched Reliance Retail. They were running a 2 lakh crore enterprise at that time, but they had the prices of okra in Jaipur and bananas in Ahmedabad on their fingertips. At that time, they were not in telecom, and now I know after Jio why they were talking about this. But they knew the number of telecom towers that Airtel had at that time. It is this passion that they bring to their jobs that despite being the late entrant that they are, in fact they are the last entrant, they are the country's biggest brick and mortar retailer. I'd like to conclude this with a poem. When my daughter heard, she's 12, that I'm going to talk on this subject, she penned a few lines on resilience which I thought was very nice, and I'd like to include them here. Learn to be the bee. Don't be affected by any spree. Winds don't break flexible trees, so hold on. Be sticky as cheese. I've been told to speak like this. Sometimes you'll just have to pick yourself up and carry on. That's what will give you the action plan by dawn. Be the lodestar without superbity. It is your appetence that will help ultimately. Thank you.